been a pretty good contested side all year at the coalface, at the stoppage and away, and the Hawks are just too good in that area tonight. You know, we've picked a night against a really good side to not be able to see it through after the first quarter, and it's old. So, it's not a great way to finish the year.
It wasn't, especially after they've been in such ripping form. The Bulldogs have now got to deal with the reality, and there's a whole bunch of decisions to make in the off-season. Do you believe the upside, or do you worry about what they didn't achieve? And the biggest decision probably, Kane, is do they leave him on the coaching plank as an uncontracted coach in the next year, or do they extend? And Caro, it's going to be a tough decision.
Well, I think we know what Kane's going to say.
What do you think? Would you be signing him in February, March?
No, absolutely not. Would you?
Well, what do you think?
So you'd make. He has to go in as an uncontracted.
I think you know we think that they have a good list. Is it a top 4 list? I'm not sure.
Well, but they think that as well.
Yep. And the other point to make is, Craig, that I think they really should have gone into these finals with a double chance, and had they not frittered around with selection in the first sort of quarter of the season, maybe they would have.
I think Kane and Lordo said that all
year.
The
most accurate thing Lordo said, well, he said a lot of accurate things, but that was one of them that sticks with me. He said, Luke Beveridge will mess around with this lineup and play some tricks and some games, and then when it gets to a serious point, he'll put the best lineup in and they'll come home hard. But it has just meant that as much as everyone got sucked into the Bulldogs and many smart football people were tipping them to win the premiership, there was just no room for error, Lordo, once again.
And with me, like, we had James Sicily on 3AW tonight, and he said, we've got so much clarity. Like, we're all just so clear on what Sam wants, from every role to the game style, how we attack, how we defend. We couldn't be clearer. And I think that's probably the part with me with the Western Bulldogs. I don't know what their team is, even going forward into next year. Like, where does McRae fit? Where does Daniel fit? This is, say, the midfield group. You know that Newcombe, Warple, Nash, and then they needed, obviously, Josh Ward to come in for Mackenzie and things like that. With the Dogs, like, James Harms comes from nowhere. He comes into the midfield, pushes Richards out to the half-back flank. Like, Riley West, you know, he's just small, but then suddenly it's Arthur Jones in the last round or two. Then he's out for the finals. And then suddenly it's Gallagher and McNeil. I just don't know. It's never ever balanced enough to get to a point to be top 4.
So I know they've gained Treloar, but they lost Dunkley a couple of years ago, and now they're losing Bailey Smith. Is it surprising that they've known about Bailey Smith and this issue for nearly 2 years?
Yeah.
And they couldn't convince him to stay, if that's what you think they wanted to do?
Yeah, I just think what a waste to have had this guy in your club for so long. And I think the reason he left initially was he was played out of position.
Yeah.
So he was a half-forward flanker, a gun wingman. He was the best wingman midfielder in the comp, and he was on a half-forward flank, just losing confidence. And that's the reason that he has not wanted to be at the Dogs.
And we just saw English there and Darcy rucking, which sort of... English had a poor night, but it does feed into... They've got the three-headed monster. Yeah. But they haven't put all 3 good games together yet. In fact, if you look at the champion data stats, they haven't been ranked in the top 25 yet in the duration they played together. So it's going to be a real challenge for them to figure out how they play the 3 of them in the team. And then you've got the lob situation as well, and whether Norton's a factor to go back. How do you untangle this? Well, and then there's Waitman as well, who plays tall, not small.
It's a question that Luke Beveridge has repeatedly asked, and he is reluctant to put any of them back. I think clearly Darcy could play as a centre-half back. Norton could do it, but he hasn't wanted to do that.
What would you do, though? What's the right setup for them? How do you build this?
I personally have always been dead against it, but I am of the view now to settle this team down. Imagine saying Liam Jones and Aaron Norton, you could be the best fullback centre-half back in the comp. Darcy, this is your forward line with Jamara and Waitman, because they all get in each other's way, and that means Rory Lobb is the one that makes way, even though he's got
more value for him now, you'd think, than they did, because the market will see him as a centre-half back as well.
But they were like a rotation on the bench. They were just having someone on the bench all the time. And what disappointed me with Cal Shadir, he refused to be outmarked on the weekend. It didn't matter or outbeat. He just refused. He's a kid who they said was a mile off when he first walked into the club, to this point in time where he refused to be outmarked. But down the other end, and this was one of the great marks, it might have been out of bounds, but it was one of the great marks. And then down the other end, this is what disappointed me most about Jamara, just efforts like that.
Is he ever going to be the guy, Lordo?
Well, he did have a very good 4 or 5 weeks, but that was a poor final.
Yeah, and then I really didn't like the laughing and the smiling and the hugging after the game. That's Scrimshaw. Yeah. That's a player he should be ragdolling, a matchup that he would love deep with that entry. And then this after the game, like, you've had 4 touches and 2 kicks in a final. and the hugs and the laughs and the smiles. I know it's a different generation. People will call me a dinosaur, but get off the ground. If you've had 4 in a final, you should be that embarrassed that you get off. You start pre-season in a week and you come back a better player.